Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we're talking about a film that I've chosen to watch. On
You make it sound like it's it's never happened before.
Because José, you might remember a little while ago, we watched 4 films of your choice.
That's right.
We watched a few Michael Curtiz's.
That's right.
Essentially. And so in retaliation I said, right, well, I'll get to choose some at some point.
Well, it's not retaliation. It's just like in return.
In return, yeah. I'm returning.
You make it sound like a crime to have seen these films.
So, and I didn't pick any. The films I've chosen are not, a particular director or anything like that. They're just kind of 4 films that. Well, one of them is Hook, which is just a film I like, really, and so I want an excuse to watch it.
Okay.
The others are films that are interesting and maybe not everyone's seen. Well, The Insider was a bit of a hit, but it's interesting to revisit it. And the other 2 are going to be The Passionate Friends and Die Welle, or The Wave, which is what we watched today.
That's right.
From 2008. It's a German film. I saw this when it came out at the cinema. I saw it at Warwick Arts Centre, because I was at uni at the time, and I went on to see this. And I knew a little bit of the backstory to it, because it's based on a true story to an extent. I don't think knew anything about it.
I knew nothing of it, no.
You never heard of it?
No.
So it's called Die Welle, or The Wave. It's directed by Dennis Gansel, written and directed.
Whom I've never heard of before either.
Nor had I. It's based on a 1967 experiment that was conducted in a California high school by a teacher called Ron Jones.
Right.
And so there will be spoilers coming up just really in the description of the experiment as it took place, because it cleaves reasonably closely to what is supposed to have actually happened, where this teacher, he found that his students couldn't really get their heads around why something like the Third Reich would have happened. How fascist kind of movements and ideologies could be seductive or appealing. And he, over the course of a week, as it is in the film, came up with a movement. He called it the Third Wave. In the film, it's called The Wave, where he got students to say his name before, like I said, you call me Mr. Jones. You stand up to answer questions. You'll sit in order. You'll wear and this sort of thing. And found that it very quickly kind of spiraled out of control. And that these kids who sort of thought, how can anyone be into fascist ideology? We're super cool hippies. Discovered that over the course of a week, they got really, really into it.
Yes.
In the film, it goes on to a dangerous extent. Didn't do so in real life, but he did need to shut it down after a week.
Yes.
It's interesting transposing the story to Germany, I think, because there's this extra level of, like, obviously they had a very famous dictatorship, and the way that it's kind of introduced in the film is these kids are supposed to be taking a lesson, a project week, and the topic is autocracy. And obviously the Third Reich comes up very quickly. And what they say isn't how can anyone be into this, but it's just like, we've been over this. These kids they've heard all the stuff about the Third Reich and they've done it to death. So they kind of feel like it could never happen here again. We've already had it.
Right.
And that's what the motivation is in a way for the teacher in this to do the same experiment.
Yes. Well, to do this exercise. And the idea is a pedagogic one. Is to show how easy one could lapse back into that mode of thinking. And then, of course, it kind of spirals out of control. I think the film is very good at showing the utopian dimension of such a project.
It's funny how it makes it... You really get how seductive it is.
Yes.
I think.
It's very appealing. So all of a sudden you're part of a group. You have an identity, you feel protected, you feel supported, right? And so the film kind of begins by that, and then it kind of begins to show all the other little niggles that, that some people feel excluded or harassed or... so you see that kind of beginning to develop as well. I thought all of that was very good.
And there are people as well, there are characters who see it turning bad very early on. There are a couple of characters who leave immediately saying this is weird, and they kind of come back into the fold when they see that there's something that could be fun about what's going on. On the other hand, there's a girl, Caro, who is in it for a few days, but she isn't really happy with it, and she does leave.
Yeah, but actually, I think her motivations for that are not
Ideological.
Yeah, she just doesn't want to wear what everybody else wears, or she likes being the center of attention, and all of a sudden she's not. There's something greater. So
Yeah.
I think the film is in a way quite good at showing the complexities of all of those things, actually, and the mixed motivations that people have. So I quite liked it. I thought some of the things kind of didn't come together for me very well. So, for example, the conversation at the end between the school teacher and his partner, where all of a sudden it's about, him not having been a success and, this all going to his head and so on, right? I mean, actually, I never quite felt that this was going to his head, or that it was a personal power project for him.
It's been, it's based on the idea that the teacher, who's played by Jürgen Vogel, who I don't know from anything else, but he's very good in this. He seems to have, he's an anarchist, really. I mean, the kind of the setup in the film is that he wanted to take the class on anarchy for a week, and this stuffy old teacher has got it and won't swap with him. And the teacher sort of says, "I think you're a bit too much into anarchy. We don't want the kids learning how to make Molotov cocktails." so he gets stuck doing the autocracy class, and then the suggestion as well is that the kids have joined the autocracy class because they figure it'll be a blow off because of him.
Yes,
he doesn't like they can call him by his first name. They don't have to call him Mr. Wenger, as his name is, which is what he makes them do. He comes in wearing anarchy t-shirts and band t-shirts and all this sort of stuff. He listens to rock and roll in his car. So, and there's talk about how the other teachers talk about him behind his back. I think he's kind of believable. Like, he is of a sort of unprofessional extreme, but you can kind of imagine how a school might have ended up getting saddled with this guy because they wanted someone who had, like, political sort of... he talks about his background is political science.
And physical education.
So they wanted someone who could do that, and they ended up with this guy who's a bit off kilter.
Yes.
He's not, like, crazy. He's just not down the line.
Well, he's someone, he says, that, he lived in Berlin, and he was in anarchist groups, and he lived in a... how do you call it when you take over a deserted...
A squat.
A squat in Kreuzberg, right?
Yeah.
I think what stands out most for me is the actors, who are very, very good, and surprisingly so, because this is a real ensemble of young people, right? Who are, obviously have been very well directed. They're very good and very believable, and so on. And it has a real sense of energy and movement, and I think it does all of that very well. I don't think it's a great movie, though. No,
it's not a great movie. I wouldn't put it up as one. It's not. It doesn't look interesting enough. Although there are some kind of aspects to its visual design that are good. Like, for instance, in the classroom, you get these shots of sort of angled up at the teacher and then angled down at the students, convey the status basically between them, that he kind of is their leader. I mean, he's their leader because he's their teacher, but then he's the leader of this movement as well. And you do get these shots that strike you. I think, like when they've all decided they're going to wear white shirts and jeans, and then you come in next morning and there's this shot of everyone's there, sat in rows wearing white shirts and jeans. You go, shit, man, it's actually happening.
I know, but the thing is that it conveys the information visually. Yeah. But it doesn't convey more than that. Like, there was nothing about the shot itself that was interesting or symbolic of something else or better or of. It was very pedestrianly kind of composed. Yeah,
until when it really tries to do that is right at the very end of the film, when he calls the students and it's become this huge movement now with a few hundred people in it. He calls them all for a kind of emergency meeting about the future of the wave into the auditorium. And as he emerges out the auditorium, you see from behind him the kind of curtains part, and you're looking at the back of his head, and then you see this, and it's basically a rally. What he's come to, and then he starts delivering like a Hitler-like speech.
Yes,
only to try and
undercut it.
And say, "Did you see what happened here?" And I'm not crazy about the ending of the film.
No, and it drags on for far too long.
I think there are elements of the film that do kind of. I mean, I don't feel any of it drags, to be fair, but
no, the ending drags. I think all those shots of him being arrested, of the students, I think the ending drags on too long.
That
they should have ended the film way earlier, way better. It just seems to meander to an end after the shooting.
Yeah. There are elements of the film that I think are too openly mechanical. Like, you see the cogs turning.
Yes, very much.
Kind of, there are various characters that represent things. So you've got, like, Caro and her boyfriend and how he's into it and she's not into it, and their relationship is broken apart by it. And then you've got the other girl who represents the interest and who's in it. And also...
And the disturbed boy, you could see where he was heading.
The character
a mile
Tim,
away.
who cleaves to the movement very, very early on and is, like, right into it, and he's answering all the questions in the right way, and he's... suggesting things, and he like finds a place in this movement. And he's like, and as you say, he's kind of like a Columbine kid. You're worried about him, and when he gets a gun, I mean, it has a good effect, but it's also very obvious. Like, if you think that gun is sort of not going to feature in the end, you're crazy. Like,
yes,
the film kind of does go down quite obvious paths with him. Though you were a little shocked when he shot himself in the face.
Yes, though I expected it at the same time. I mean,
Yeah.
I think I'm just a good audience.
You are. I agree. The film has issues in that respect, but on the other hand, I do apart from the disturbed kid, as you say, I think everyone is believable. All the characters are believable.
I mean, what I liked watching most about it was not just the progression, because the structure is basically the class is introduced on Monday, and then you basically, see the film is broken up into, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the finale is on Saturday, right? So I like that whole structure. I like the way the themes develop very much. It's quite poppy. It moves very well, and it's very interesting to see. And it certainly demonstrates that case well about, the appeal of fascism. Yeah, so you can see it unfolding. And actually, the interesting thing about it is that it seems quite progressive, right? So, it's all anti-globalization and, kind of, they're raging against kind of, the richer getting richer and the poorer getting poorer and rights being eroded, and they're anti-Bush, and the film unfolds in ways that you think, oh, how interesting, right? Before kind of leading you to, what some of the other effects of that are. So I think, how the film makes that complex is kind of, to me, really, really interesting. You can't see an American teen movie, which is what this is. This is a high school movie, right? Kind of being this smart or this aware. Yeah. So I liked that, and I also liked the fact that you got a sense of what, high school life in Germany in 2008 was like. Like, I was fascinated by odd things, like how adept students were kind of using Photoshop and things like that, right? Like, kind of, or the amount of computers that were in and photocopiers, and how students had access to those things, so they could sign up for them, the drama club, right? All of that kind of interested me in a way that had little to do with the movie, except the movie did it very well in creating a context for, its themes.
And I think that's also part of the underlying idea of sort of so at the start, when they introduce the lesson, they're talking about autocracy, and they're saying, what does autocracy mean, what's involved, what do you need, all this sort of stuff. And one of the students suggests you need unhappiness, lot of unemployment, and kind of social unrest.
Yes, inflation, they said as well. Injustice,
that's right, social injustice. And, of course, you kind of take that, you go, yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. But then this kind of community seems fairly well off. Like, there's no one who's really kind of in any... there's no one in poverty or anything like that. There's a couple of kids who have kind of broken families they come from, but
there are little hints of that. So, because one of the lines at the end is, let's forget about class, let's forget about race. And actually, the film does show you how being part of a movement like that means that those differences are erased. So there's the kid who can't afford to buy a shirt, and that someone else buys it for him. There's the guy who's a Turk, who all of a sudden it's, not thought of. Yeah, he's part of the wave. He's no longer the Turk. Yeah. Right. So I think kind of the film is smart in that,
I guess. But it does seem to me like ultimately this is generally set in somewhere where the kind of the world that the kids are describing as fertile ground for fascism to develop is not really the world that they live in, and what the film ultimately is trying to show is that it's much more seductive than that. It's interesting setting it in a school as well. I mean, obviously it came from a school in the first place, but as you kind of suggested, like with the Turkish and the poorer kid, the school does have these kind of separations in these cliques, and kids do separate themselves. And like this whole thing about there's a couple of goth kids that show up after the first day who want in, and the teacher describes them as like, you're wearing a particular kind of uniform yourself, and what the teacher does, one of the first things he does is separate the seating so that he mixes up the kids and he gets them out of their kind of little social groups.
What's most important here is not the individual but the collective. That's so.
Yes.
The thing about the uniform is to erase those differences, but not to erase those differences necessarily in a way that's only positive, right? Because in erasing those differences, you're also erasing people's individuality, right? And so the film is very good at kind of distinguishing between those things, that kind of at showing both the benefits and the cost of, allowing yourself to be seduced, by those ideas, right? And I think the fact that it kind of depicts the appeal and the benefits and the excitement and the solidarity and the feeling protected and all of that is kind of it's very appealing. I mean, I remember reading this thing about, I think, Frederick Jameson in The Political Unconscious, writing that you can't understand something like the Third Reich if you're just talking about it in terms of evil. That you actually have to show the utopian dimension. People weren't mad. There were reasons why they supported kind of Hitler, right? And they had to do with all of the things that this film shows us. And I think that's what's so interesting. And I think it's a film, I mean, right now I can't help but read everything in terms of Brexit as well, right? And it's a film that lends itself to a kind of a reading of Brexit, right? Kind of, here are the conditions. Really, there's unemployment, or people can't live on their salaries. I mean, they keep saying employment is high, but nobody believes it, right? It's all these part-time jobs that people meander around, right? And the sense of injustice and unfairness and kind of, Grenfell Tower or Windrush or, so the sense of dissatisfaction. And then the other side of that is, belonging to a group which you can take collective action with, which you can feel protected, almost invincible. In fact, you could go up to the roof of, up a building and spray your logo and basically spit on everyone below. The film is very good at demonstrating that, I think.
I suppose I didn't read it in terms of Brexit, watching it today. I mean, also I wouldn't have 10 years ago. I mean, I thought about it in terms of Trump and
same thing
and Red Hats. There's definitely similarities, but I mean really in terms of the kind of MAGA movement and the people who are super into Trump.
Yes.
There's a movement going on in America in the way that Brexit doesn't have a movement around it in that way. The Red Hat is such a symbol, and the rallies and that sort of thing. I suppose
I'm thinking of it in terms of, UKIP, the Tommy Robinson. I mean, kind of, has analogies.
It definitely has analogies. Sure. But, UKIP have been absorbed by the Conservative Party, to be fair.
Well, all the more dangerous.
I certainly know what you mean.
But let's go back to the film as a film. I mean, why did you want me to see it?
Well, I picked on it because I haven't seen it since it came out, and it's a film that I remember being really interested in. When it came out, I was pretty surprised by it, and so I picked on it essentially because I think it's a kind of underseen film, and there's no good reason that anyone should have kind of broken their back to go and see it. It's just a film, but it's a film that stuck with me since I saw it.
Yes.
The experience of seeing it stuck with me, and it does something that I think is interesting, which I would really only compare it to Starship Troopers, which I considered like high praise, which is that it shows you the kind of mechanisms of fascism working in a way that explains and kind of really helps you understand that seductive part of it. I think the great thing, everyone kind of understands now that Starship Troopers is a really great satire on it. It's not actually saying any of the things that it looks like it's saying. What the film is doing the whole way through is showing you how propaganda and fascism works on you, and it does it by working on you. Like, if you're not into it at the end, the film kind of hasn't done the job, and I think that's what's good about it. And I think this film does something similar, particularly in that central section where the kids are really getting into it and they're developing things on their own. They invent the symbol, the gesture themselves, the salute. Yes. They invent the logo. They go around doing graffiti all night.
Yes, you're showing them being creative and doing all kinds of good things, like working together and being, having common goals and sharing.
It's incredibly seductive at that point. Yeah. And at the end of the film, on the final day, the teacher gets the students to write essays saying what their experiences of the last week have been, and he reads a few out in that speech where he kind of pretends to be Hitler for a bit, and he reads a few of them out, and they're all saying very positive things. I wasn't part of a group before, but now I am. The things that they say, they really worry you, because you think, God, is he going haywire with this? Because he's only reading out really positive things about their experiences. But they're also believable. Like, you believe the good that they would feel they got out of this week. And as you say, it's important to understand that, because you can't just go, people get seduced into things because it's evil and people like being evil. That's not what happens. It's not how it happens at all. It happens slowly, and it happens through not realising it or not fighting it or thinking, seeing the good parts and not the bad parts.
I think the film would have been better if the central figure had not been the teacher. Yeah, like if you'd made, one of the teen kids, maybe, what's his name, Max.
Do you mean the central figure of the movement?
Max Reinhold. No, yes. The film is structured around the teacher. Right? So, he's how we begin the film, right? Then it goes on to the teenagers, but you're always returning to him, right? And then at the end, you stay with him, right? Yeah. I think the film would have been more interesting if it had been centered around one of the kids rather than on the teacher. Just because the teacher is running the experiment doesn't mean he necessarily should have been the focus of the film. Well, he's not quite the focus of the film, but he's the central character.
He's the central character, I guess. But there is a whole section of the film where he kind of disappears. I think it is that section I mentioned where the kids are being creative and that sort of thing. Like, there's quite a long time, and it's also that huge party that they have on the beach. It's a very long time that you don't see very much of the teacher at all, and it is about the kids and their experiences. And
but that's where my objection to it is, because it is about the kids and their experiences, but actually it's structured around the teacher and the change that he goes through.
But what I mean is that when you kind of realise, God, I haven't seen the teacher for a long time. I think for me that was a kind of interesting thing to realise, that the fact that it has been structured around the teacher and then you haven't seen him for such a long time, it's been all about the kids, conveys how it's getting out of hand, how it's going away from him.
Yes.
The kids are kind of taking it on for themselves.
Yes. I think, all I'm saying is, if the film had begun with the Max Reinhold character, the jock, the water volleyball student, water polo guy, and if it ended with him, so that you see him symbolically representing the changes that all of the students had gone through, then to me it would have been a stronger film. So obviously you need to show the teacher and the experiment and also how it affects him and whatever. You could have done that, but actually there's something off kilter about making it about the teacher, because it's not. And really you have all of the sequences at the beginning, then the last thing about how it affects him with his girlfriend, and then that too long end where you see him being handcuffed and taken to jail and all of that stuff, and that glance to his girlfriend. I mean, it makes it seem as if the film is about him instead of about this experience in fascism and how it affects all these kids. My thinking behind this is, because I was thinking, in many ways it's a teen film, and you think, well, it can't be a teen film because it's about the teacher, really, right? And actually I was thinking how much more interesting it would have been as a proper teen film, right? Because it kind of almost is. Yeah, it is.
You mean like if it were like a parody of a teen film almost, like if it took on that structure?
No, I'm thinking that the teen film in American cinema is really underexplored, right? So it's always about a particular set of subjects, about falling in love, or about being in, or about being popular, right? Or about the bullying and the power plays in high school, right? But to have made a teen film about how susceptible we all are to fascism,
Yeah.
that's amazing, right? And this is kind of that, but not quite. So all those American high school films or teen films, they often figure teachers, sometimes as monsters, right? Yeah. So, and they often revert, so you have the students doing stuff, and then it often reverts to the teacher. But the focus, the central character, is the students. So I think how much more interesting this exploration of fascism and its seductiveness and the potential we all have, to kind of, for us to be seduced by it. How much more interesting that would have been if the focus had been on, on the students, on it as a teen film, rather than, on it as a drama, that on which the teacher is the central character.
Yeah. I'd say something else you wouldn't see in American cinema is the way that the film treats, or its attitude towards sex and sexual kind of openness.
Yes.
Which is only a small thing, really. But yeah, it's kind of struck me, like, you've got the teacher and his girlfriend/wife, not too clear on the relationship, but they live together. And she's another teacher at school. And she's kind of heavily pregnant. And he's working on making the movement more whatever, hardcore, more Nazi, basically, one night at home. And she comes up behind him and she's like, I've got an idea, why don't we? And then she types something on the computer and she browses to a sexy nurses website. You wouldn't see that sexy nurses website show up on an American screen, I think. Not in a similar sort of film.
I was thinking actually of the other incident where, the teenagers are clearly having sex. It's particularly accepted. The young man stays over with the young girl's family. And, the young boy is in some ways much more interested actually in sitting down with the father and watching the football, but there's kind of like this relay of, where the parents are getting...
This is the other one I was going to bring up. The daughter / girlfriend says, come upstairs, we need to work on our project assignment. And he goes, what project assignment? And clearly it's code for, well, let's go upstairs and have sex. And the dad just knows this. Yeah. And he goes, yeah, go on, why don't... And he goes off with the wife saying, why don't we work on our own project assignment? And like that, and actually then it turns out that she did genuinely want to work on a project assignment, and he's disappointed not getting any. But that again, that kind of sexual openness of the dad just knows about it and the mum knows about it.
Yes.
And it's like, it's cool.
That acceptance.
They're 17, 18, whatever.
Yeah, the teenagers have sex, yes, I like that very much as well. Anyway, let's wrap it up. Reasons to see this film.
It's very entertaining, I think. I think it keeps your interest. It does have its issues with the end, but it's a kind of a slightly novel, intelligent drama that / almost thriller, kind of where things spiral out of hand. And I think it has some real tension in it.
Yes.
And real stakes.
I very much recommend it as well. So it's not a perfect film, but it's a really fascinating film, and it grabs you. It makes it makes very good points. It's kind of what it's about is interesting, and kind of the energy and verb and also intelligence with which the story is told is very appealing. And for those who are just interested in actors like myself, it was really fascinating to see Max Riemelt. And also Max Mouth from...
if you've seen Bridge of Spies, he's the young lad who Tom Hanks talks to, but he's also been in Homeland.
Homeland is what I was thinking of. So it's really wonderful, to see these actors that you recognize from elsewhere. So Max Riemelt is from Sense8, and to see them as very young performers. I mean, it's 10 years ago, they would have been in their early 20s or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of interesting to see them kind of being quite good, but they're younger selves, right? So that to me is always kind of one of the appeals of films, is to watch actors and to watch actors unfold. And sometimes you're watching them not in a chronological order, right? But yeah, kind of, I think, seeing the performers is another reason, or seeing these particular performers, which are already well known to us, is another reason to see this movie.
Yeah. And I think, like I say, ultimately that the way it conveys the seductiveness of fascism and the kind of things it can offer people that get them into it is interesting. And I think, you know, it's a contextual element, but the fact that it is set in Germany is interesting in and of itself. I think the particular response that the German students in this film have to speaking about autocracy and authoritarianism is really interesting, because it's one of this weariness that do we have to keep going over this?
Yes.
And that's really interesting. Even it's only a couple of minutes that they really do that, but it's to see their reactions when they do that is fascinating.
Yes. So another reason to see this film.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube, Facebook and Twitter, and eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much for listening.
Bye bye.